Hello and welcome, everyone. We're really excited to have you all here today for the third in our 6-session series, Day 1 and Beyond, which will take you through a series of topics and activities related to building out on Oracle Cloud. If you are new to these events, welcome. We're hosted on Cloud Customer Connect, which is our Oracle community for end users. I'll be dropping some links in the chat throughout the presentation today that lead you to the CCC forums, and we invite you to create a free account, join in discussions, post questions, look for future events, all kinds of things there. My name is Kenna Kettrick. I'm a program manager with the OCI go-to-market team. And today I'm joined by Larry Beausoleil, Cloud Engineering Senior Enablement Manager, and Jeremy Walker, Master Principal Cloud Architect. And today we also have a special guest, Johannes Merman, also a Master Principal Cloud Architect here at OCI. And today we're going to be focusing on security quick start. Before I hand things over to presenters, though, I do have one quick poll. If you've been with us before, you will recognize this one. If you have a moment, just drop your thoughts in the poll there about what topics interest you. We build these sessions, these fundamentals, and our weekly Thursday deep dives with your needs in mind. We want to know what you're interested in learning more about. And so if you can share your thoughts, that helps me build out future events as well. I will drop a link in the chat to our events calendar so you can look up to see what's coming up and sign up for future events that might interest you. I'm also going to drop a link to a survey that we're running with our customers. Your opinions are really valuable to us. We really appreciate if you have 1 or 2 minutes of your time to provide us with feedback about your experience. We always appreciate that. And our usual reminders, we encourage you to use that Q&A box down at the bottom of the screen for any questions throughout the process today. We will have some time for Q&A at the end as well. And of course, we're recording, so we will have a replay posted up on the forums and on YouTube. If you have colleagues who are unable to make it, or if you want to share this out later, I will post links to where that will be as well. All right, I think that is quite enough from me. Go ahead and take it away, Larry.
Awesome. Thank you, Kenna. And welcome everybody to today's journey on Day 1 and Beyond security. This is an exciting day. I think this is probably one of the most important talks in our journey. I am joined today with Jeremy and along with Johannes. So if Jeremy and Johannes, if you want to introduce yourselves real quick, a little bit of your background, and then we'll continue this journey.
Will do. Thanks, Larry. It's good to be here again. This has been fun. I think we're learning a lot together, and I hope this is very beneficial to everyone listening now and then perpetually. Yeah, my name is Jeremy Walker, and I've been in the cloud architecture ring for the better part of 8 years, doing everything from DevOps, security, building infrastructure, automation, and then optimizing applications to run on the cloud. And today I'm honored to have a current and former teammate of mine, Johannes Merman, who is going to be the expert of the day regarding security. This is his bread and butter. And so we're going to lean on him to inform us as to the right way to operate on the cloud, on OCI, best practices, and then provide us some feedback and information on the services that we offer on OCI. And so that's I'm gonna, Johannes, just if you would give us a little bit of an intro, and then what your role here is at Oracle.
Sure, thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, I've been I've just had my 20-year anniversary at Oracle, working with security products, performance-related things, integration for the better part of 15 years. The last couple of years, well, since OCI, took off, I've been working with OCI and OCI security related things, So I hope I can bring a little bit some kind of customer experience to the table around how some of these services are best used. And yeah, let's see if we can get some questions answered as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, and we appreciate that. And that's something you touched on. Something we do want to hit is, what have you seen other customers do with these services, with these products? Maybe some lessons learned, and then how would you advise and prescribe customers best utilize these offerings that OCI has? So yeah, let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah. So we have another survey. We just want to get a brief understanding of the audience we have here with us today. We want to make sure that we answer as much as we possibly can. I do want to just give everybody a heads up of the level that we're working with and we're starting with for security. This is the foundationals. This is the fundamental portion of security. We all have to start somewhere, and we all want to understand what Oracle has to offer in this case. So we'll keep this survey up for a brief second while that's going through, while you're answering that. Today, we're going to talk about Oracle security principles. We're going to talk about Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Security Services. And then we're going to focus a little bit on identity and access management and data protection. These are all things that are very crucial when we talk about a cloud landscape and how we actually make sure that our applications are secure. Whatever we're deploying needs to be protected. And this is why, you know, bringing in Jeremy and Johannes in this journey is going to be crucial for us, because I really want to make sure that we get the best practices, the best understanding of how to actually implement this correctly. Because we've all seen stories. We've all seen stories out there of companies leaving things open, you know, making mistakes that could have been prevented. So we want to talk about how we go through that journey. So the first thing, you know, we've seen this before in our you know, Day One and Beyond series, talking about our complete cloud services, the fact that we have a lot of different capabilities here to really help with what you're trying to build out. We are going to focus today in the security portion over here. So this is going to be focusing, we'll talk a little bit about Cloud Guard. We're going to talk a little bit briefly about security zones, briefly about Vault, and some of the other services that are just built in by default to really help make sure that you are set up correctly to begin with. And then we have a lot of different architectures that you can actually implement to make sure that you have that next level of security. You know, a new architecture that's being talked a lot about in the industry is a zero trust network, and that's something that's been around for a while. It's just a matter of implementing it inside of a cloud vendor, and how you do that. What tools do you use to make sure that that's implemented? And we've seen this one before. We've talked about the shared responsibility model, you know, the security and compliance responsibilities from, you know, Oracle side and the customer side, to make sure that we both understand, you know, what it is we're doing and what SLAs Oracle's providing, what the customer needs to maintain when you're starting to set this up. So it's something that you have to look at. You know, I'm protecting the guest OS. How do I do that? You know, I need to protect my data. Am I protecting that data at rest and in transit? You know, what level of security am I implementing around everything that's happening here? And with that said, I'm going to hand this next portion over to Jeremy and Johannes to kind of take us through this journey. So Jeremy, Johannes, thank you again for joining us today, and it's up to you guys. So let me know when you want to. I'll kind of keep you along here, and we'll move slides as we go.
Awesome. Yeah, and keep us honest, Larry, on time and everything. The one thing I am disappointed in is we didn't get any jokes today. We had some jokes last week. We didn't get any jokes.
Just wait. They're
okay,
coming.
Good. All right, good deal. All right, that's one thing. If we could, I want to jump back one slide if we could, and I'm going to ask Johannes one thing, and it's a question that a lot of customers have. On this slide, Johannes, you know, that line in green where we have, you know, for IaaS is virtualization network infrastructure, you know, below that guest OS as you go into PaaS, and then SaaS is the actual application. What are we doing? What's Oracle doing to ensure that our customers are safe there? Just real quick, you know, the steps that we're taking as our part of this shared responsibility.
Right. So I think, I mean, we just have a few minutes in this call, so let me see if we can make it brief. But I think one of the important things is on the IaaS side, right? Once you relinquish the control of, you know, suddenly servers and, you know, hardware is within Oracle's data center, right? So obviously we have the usual physical security around data centers, but I think on the compute side, what we like to call out as well is like the networking, right? We have off-box network, you know, off the actual compute. So there's no way to, because you're sharing things with your neighbor, right? You're sharing, you know, some of these servers that run multiple compute. We have made sure that, you know, you can't compromise, you know, get access to the network on another customer's compute, right? That's simply not possible, even though you're sharing actually, because the network part is not part of the box, it's off box. So I think that's an important thing that some customers are concerned about. I'm sharing things with another customer. Can I get access to my network? No, they can't. So that's an important thing, right? And then
right.
On the PaaS side, we do provide compute images, for example, right? For the guest OS. So we have a number of VMs that you can use. So you don't have to go and say, well, I want to install my own OS. We have a number of OSs that we keep up to date, Linux flavors, Windows, different things, that you can use. And obviously you can also use some even more hardened images from CAS. We have some partnership with them as well, right? So
right.
the
And
OS.
then in those, we're kind of eating our own dog food, so to speak, and following best practices and hardening and patching and keeping those configurations up to date, right?
Right. And we do have autonomous Linux in there as well, right? Where the idea is that it will automatically update, right? So to avoid some of these typical situations where you have your computer running, everything's great, it works perfect, but you forgot about the process of keeping your OS up to date, right?
Awesome.
So
yeah, and that makes sense. I just want to touch, let everyone know that on the other side of the line, Oracle's following the standards that we prescribe to customers as well, to make to keep our side of that line secure, and like you said, no one's sharing data, no one's able to cross any lines. All right, yeah. So moving on to the way we generally do security at Oracle. We have these principles that we've described. Several customers may have seen these in some of our sales slides, or even some of our engineering slides. This idea of simple, prescriptive, and then integrated security. Simple's easy. Prescriptive, we provide this. Something we're talking about today is that integration. Can you give us some insight into how that works? This integrated idea of security being involved in all aspects of the cloud environment.
Right. So I'm just seeing a few folks saying maybe that they have a hard time hearing me on the chat. So I know that's let know that's a problem. Sorry, Jeremy, I just got sidetracked by that one. So we're talking about the unified security and identity across IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, right? That's like, want to dive into that one. Maybe can do me a favor, just add a little bit more context, just make sure it's kind of a broad topic.
Yeah, definitely. So the idea of we're operating in the cloud, we have our systems, we have our servers, we have our resources built out. And a lot of times on-prem, we're used to the tools that we use. We have our Palo Altos. We run our McAfee or our semantic security or threat detection services. But in the cloud, OCI provides services and integrations into those services that are a lot of times built in, that are native to interfacing with the resources with OCI. How does OCI's those offerings make the other two, make the prescriptive recipes again that we provide, and also make it simple to work in this environment?
Right. I think a lot of this comes back to the always on kind of posture, that this has been thought in from the get-go. So any kind of service in OCI that's developed has to go through a process where it has to live up to a number of things, right? So any service is automatically, built in a way where it integrates with the same kind of logging functionality, the same kind of anomaly detection if we find issues in logs, for example. So that's whether it's IaaS or PaaS or SaaS, underlying they use the same kind of basic services in OCI, right? So for example, logging as one thing. Across the board, it's the same logging functionality we use for everything, which makes it easier and quicker to detect problems. On the flip side, from a security perspective, everything can be tied into the same identity service we have, right? So giving end users an easy way to access, whether it's the OCI console, it's PaaS services, or it's SaaS services. So it's kind of full spectrum.
Yeah, so that makes it so you have IAM, the policies and the users that are uniform or unified across the services. So you have a single point of entry to set that security layer, and it works within all the services on OCI, or the large majority, with very few exceptions. You can set those policies in a simple way and then apply them across the environment, as opposed to having several different tools that you have to create users or create different policies. Okay, that's really good to know. That's really good to know that exists. Going on to go ahead.
Yeah, I think that definitely gives us a good start on the security posture that Oracle provides here. Making sure that we talk about it is integrated. The security is something that Oracle has presented in almost every event, talking about how we make sure that security is our first and foremost. And so it's in this journey that we can start talking about these next pieces of what layers, where do we put our security, what are the tools that we provide, or what are the things that are just built into the platform. And so this is where we get into that integrated and automated security for our data and identity. So, Jeremy, you're bringing up identity and access management. I mean, that's a good crucial start, because how do we access the console, and then how do we actually get into some of these services that we're using, and when do I have to go turn it on, or when is it just on by default? And the vast majority of it here is just on by default, or we're giving it to you in a manner that you're able to just go click a button and enable it because you want that extra layer or need that extra layer of security, because not every service is a requirement to meet your compliances. So that's something that you kind of think about along this journey. And I'm gonna kind of hand this one to Johannes, but for this slide here, are there any key things that kind of pop out as like, if I'm launching my account today, what are some key things that we're seeing on this slide that I would need to set up and I want to make sure that I have running?
So I think the most important thing, and this has probably been covered a little bit in some of the other sessions already, but that is, in a new tenancy, the most important thing is to consider the use of compartments and policies and user groups, right? From the get-go, to have a good segmentation of who should have access to what, which kind of roles, or maybe on an environment level, how you want to slice up things, right? It just makes it a lot easier down the road to make sure you can separate concerns and make sure that the right folks get the right access to the right things, right? Often we see customers kick off and start building all kinds of things just in one compartment, and everybody has access to everything until it goes wrong, or somebody says from corporate security says that's not going to fly, guys, and then it's a little bit of a hurdle trying to then go back and rearrange everything, right? So that's one of the crucial things as part of like the onboarding to get through that. And often we see identity federation, hooking up to an existing maybe corporate IDP as a good thing to do. Just makes life easier. But going down to the right here, across these different things, as you said, a lot of the things are on by default. And a lot of the things, for example, encryption is using Oracle managed keys, right? So it's encrypted from the get-go. It's encrypted by Oracle managed keys. If there are requirements, you can also go ahead and use your own keys, right? So you have your own keys and you store them secretly in our service, but a customer will then manage those keys. That's also an area. Besides that, we often see things start out slowly where we need to connect from the cloud to our on-premises environment. Maybe we start out with some VPN, setting up the VPN, and then down the road do kind of fast connects. So we have those options if that connectivity needs to be there in a secure way. That we also see that happen, progressively when the need, for higher bandwidth or more, fast connect provides predictive throughput versus a VPN over the internet. And last thing I would mention is probably CloudGuard as an area that's CloudGuard is in there. We're going to talk about it. one of our free services that, you can just turn it on. It's not turned on from the beginning of your tenancy, but you can turn it on and it'll simply detect. It'll react and detect things. It'll not change things for you, but it'll let you know if there are certain areas that could, be changed to improve your security posture, or maybe catch a few things along the way if some developers have had, playing around with some things that could cause a security concern. I think that's probably a few things I want to highlight.
Yeah, that's good. And I would want to get into CloudGuard a bit more because, like you said, it has a ton of possibilities that you can integrate it in different parts of your system. And like you said, it can nudge you in the right directions. And then it also has some integrations on the back end that you maybe can look into either automation or connect into some of your either your PagerDuty or Slack or what have you, to make sure that you're aware of what's going on in your environment when you're not actively looking at it. So those are great things to mention. One of the things you mentioned, right, you started at the beginning, which is where we're going to start, which is identity and IAM. I think going into the next, that's the next thing. Yeah, going into to IAM, we've hit on this, Larry, every single time, every single talk, and I think we're going to, because as part of that integrated security model, it does touch everything, because it's like you said, security's job zero. So you have to restrict access to all of the resources in a uniform fashion, and our mechanism for that is IAM. Since we have gone over this, I kind of want to flip it, Jonas. What are some big? We've said how you should do it. What are some big hurdles that you've seen customers have, or oversights that customers will have when they set up IAM, set up either policies or users or permissions?
I would say it kind of depends, on customers. What we see sometimes is that the compartment structure doesn't fit the way the business works, so it just kind of clashes sometimes with how to administer your tenancy, right? And who's going to control who has access to what. So definitely the compartment structure, we see often problems with that just makes it a little bit more tedious to maintain the tenancy, right? And the other thing is policies. Sometimes we see an explosion of policies that often lead back to maybe a misunderstanding of how policies can be written, so that there's a tendency to write too many policies, and that then causes a bit of a problem in keeping an overview and understanding what's actually what policies you have. Probably those are the two I've mentioned.
Yeah, is there a good way to manage that? Yeah, because the more policies you create, the more overhead and more overhead you create, and the more possibilities for oversight. But also you need to be as granular as possible in your permissions to have the least permissible access. So what are some things that we can do to make sure that we play both sides of that coin, so that we have the least permissible, but also we don't create an administrative burden for ourselves?
Right. So one part is coming back a little bit to the compartment structure. That can help, whether you go with, for example, having compartments for different resource type, for example, networks spelled out in one compartment, or you have compartments for environment life cycles as well in there, or line of businesses. That's one area that's good to have. From a policy perspective, what we've seen is that you can be very granular with policies, going, not just writing policies on resource family level, but going further down, or adding conditions. What we see often is that we have the option of adding conditions. So, allow this group access to these resources under these conditions, right? And that can be based on tags, for example. So if you have a good tagging strategy, you can use those tags in writing policies that almost become like, dynamic policies that work off of tags. That greatly reduces the number of policies you need. So it kind of depends on the use cases. Yeah. That's one area I've seen.
That makes sense. And I know we'll go over this in the ops session later, but tags, for me, coming from my background, were huge, from all the way to developers, security, and then billing and maintenance. Tags are useful everywhere. So yeah, definitely put a pin in that one and remember it. But you also mentioned something a little bit earlier today about identity access management, and then having a layer for federation on top of that to actually manage that. What explain to us a little bit, just in case somebody hadn't heard, the idea of federation. How does that help managing IAM within OCI and also integrating IAM with your organization?
Right. So today, often folks already have an identity provider somewhere, right? Either some corporate identity provider where all the users are present with different group memberships and all that. And we just want to leverage those users already exist. So federation just is a simple way of federating with the OCI IAM service using federation. So you log in as usual to your own IDP, and OCI can work with that. So you can log into OCI using that user. It becomes even better when you have a concept of single sign-on. So you can log into OCI using your IDP, but you can also log into 5 other applications you're used to without having to log in again, right? So this is an old concept. I guess federation has been around for what 10, 20 years at least. So and OCI obviously works with federation. What we do is from the get-go, when you get a tenancy, we actually do pre-wire OCI with our identity cloud service that customers can use if they want, to provide a single sign-on between OCI, for example, and other existing applications. We see very often that, for example, if customers have other cloud providers, like Azure, for example, or something like that, we can set up chain federation. So very quickly you can connect these things, and you can keep using your IDP of choice and log into OCI. It just makes it easier to administer.
Yeah, it keeps the ops people happy that they don't have to manage users across their Slack channels and their mail systems and domain controllers and all that. You have one user management system, whether it's AD in the case of a lot of enterprises, or the one we're actually going to talk about in a little bit for OCI, the integration piece of it. And there's one, I know we have a note here, and it's important because we're talking about security, but with federation, with IAM permissions, I want to break off a little bit and mention something about MFA, or multi-factor authentication, and why it's important. I think I have MFA with my app to log into my bank account. I have MFA with my son's Fortnite account so that he doesn't spend a ton of V-Bucks on my credit card. Why is MFA important to regulate and to restrict access for our cloud environments?
I mean, yeah, probably everybody kind of is used to MFA at some level, right? So it's simply just to increase the security, right?
Right.
So that makes sense, and this just tying this back to, for example, identity cloud service or using an IDP, right? Is that they provide a lot of capabilities within MFA, right?
Right.
They provide you touch point with, for example, third-party MFA providers, or they roll their own MFA functionality that gives you a lot of flexibility, right? It doesn't have to be good old-fashioned, and enter a pin you get on a text message, right? It could be a push, it could be something else. I think that's important to have that flexibility in there.
Yes, and definitely, and it's good to know that this is integrated with OCI and the providers. You mentioned our service, our identity, our Oracle identity service. We're going to go into it, and I'll preface it with this, because you warned me when we were prepping for this discussion, is that it's huge and it's deep. And so for our customers listening, if you're interested in what we're about to talk about, the Oracle Identity Cloud Service, there's a lot of resources to go a lot deeper. We're not going to go into the depths of its capabilities, but we do want to talk about how it works and what it can do, what services it provides to your organization, so whether or not we'd like to use it or not. So yeah, Johannes, what is Oracle Identity Cloud Service, and then what can it do for you, the customer, to make your life easier?
Let's see if we can keep this short.
Oh, yes.
No, it's been around for quite some years, right? I mean, obviously at the bottom part of it, identity store and lifecycle management. It's a place to have have your users, group membership roles, that kind of information, metadata about users, and then provide a number of core services. For example, a single sign-on, whether it is to OCI, whether it is to your custom applications, or it is to Oracle SaaS application, right? All of that, basically providing single sign-on as a kind of umbrella across all of this is one of the key functionalities. Importantly is also that it can integrate. It can integrate with different kind of logins, whether it's your Facebook, your social login, your federated login with the existing IDP. It can provide the MFA functionality we spoke about. And just mention on the left-hand side, adaptive security is more on, it will actually monitor behavior and can assign a risk score to users. And based on that, say, well, probably that user might be a threat, so we can lock that account and send off an alert on that. And other things to call out is, in terms of integration, it can connect to your on-premise, for example, Active Directory, do automatic synchronization of users, things like that. What you would expect from an identity service, and also a few cases on the right-hand side that are of interest is, we can hook up IDCS, for example, to be used in authentication of your logging into Linux boxes, right? So we also have that kind of integration through different kind of plugins. So when you log into your Linux, authenticate with the username and password, for example, that's actually IDCS that can be used for that. So it is kind of this full identity cloud service. That was a really quick.
Yeah, and like I said, it does a ton. And Larry, we probably need to have a follow-up session just on IDCS, because like I said, there's so much that does.
It's definitely a deep topic. It's one of those we wanted to bring it to light for this session because of the fact I'm not going to say it's a requirement, but it's a requirement. It's a best practice requirement when you're building out your account to take on that next level of security posture because of what it provides you in your account. For what Johannes was bringing up, for all of these capabilities, these are things that you want as you're building out your tenancy. These are things that you want as you're using your SaaS, your PaaS, your IaaS, all of these. This is the next piece of it. And it's something that it meshes well with the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Identity and Access Management, because all you're doing is you're enabling this, and then you're mapping your policies. It makes it very easy to have that next layer of security. So yeah, Jeremy, it's definitely something that we will dive into deeper, because this is a very crucial component when you start building out your account.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll look at it because I know it's a fun one to talk about too, just because of what all it does. But that hedges out our kind of the user and access piece. And like I said, we will follow up. Larry and I have already discussing going deeper into these topics, but it's almost painful to go at this 10,000-foot view over these, but it's just, we really want to get the capabilities out there before we go deep into a lot of these topics. So that's a brief on access, user management within OCI. We want to shift a little bit to now your data. You've used the identity service to limit who can see what and what those people can see, and that level. So now take it down to the actual data, the resources themselves. How do we keep those safe? One of the first services that we're looking at is Oracle Cloud Vault, and it's a key management, a key storage service. Johannes, what are some good use cases for this? When would you use Oracle Vault to store something?
So there are two main use cases. I mean, obviously this is very much driven by regulation or company requirements, right? But there are two key use cases, either around key management. So basically moving from the simple approach of, hey, it's Oracle managed. Oracle has provided encryption keys. They're being used in object storage, block storage database. We got you covered. It's encrypted. But now we're moving down the spectrum, saying, yeah, I want to be in control of my keys, right? So that's where you can use the Oracle Vault to create your own master encryption keys, have them stored, and in a hardware security module, really secure and compliant, and you have your own keys. So that's one use case. The other use case is secrets, like good old-fashioned passwords, right? They live all over the place. They're still being used when folks deploy stuff in configuration scripts and all kind of areas, right? That's a bad practice. You can store secrets, for example, passwords. It could also be certificates. You can store them in the vault, and you can fetch them during your deployment cycle when needed without exposing them as a different use case. So
yeah, and there's a question in the chat. I was reading it because it kind of goes along with what you were just saying, and the question is, we have implemented a sieve now, looking for some password rotation and creation automation. What options do we have? Vault and some of the other services you mentioned may play into this. What are some good password rotation and then creation mechanisms that can be used?
Let's see how to. I mean, definitely the vault can be used for storing the secrets, right? But it's a little bit more to that also. That there's a process here involved here, right? So we would need to look at additional functionality. But I would say the vault, given that it's fully API, accessible, could be used to store the secrets and updated secrets. And you wouldn't need changes in your actual deployment scripts and all that for pulling those passwords. That it would be the same APIs and all that. It would just be versioned. So that's definitely a way to do that. I think for the actual process, there's more to it than we can cover today. Of doing that.
And that makes sense. But yeah, so the process is kind of it depends, but it's definitely something where you can use Vault to store those secrets, and perhaps some functions or maybe even some of the IDCS to regulate the rotation and enforced implementation of a key rotation policy or standard. But yeah, so one more thing. So Vault, it follows some of our integration principles of OCI security. How does, you mentioned it was the APIs, are there services that integrate natively with Vault? Is that correct? Am I getting that correctly?
Yeah. So definitely, I mean, in OCI, as I mentioned previously, when services are built in OCI, they have to follow a number of steps and adhere to certain things, saying, yeah, we can use the logging functionality, we can use the key management functionality of OCI, right? We integrate with these platform services. So it's really easy to switch your keys, for example, on block storage, saying, I want to go from auto manage to using my own keys using Vault.
Yep.
That's a use case that's out of the box available to use.
Yeah, I think, and that's another topic that we can talk for days on for encryption, using the right level of encryption for what you're trying to do, how to rotate the keys, rotating passwords. There's some good industry standard guides when we talk about like the NIST guide and talking about like proper, and it's not only user protection, data protection, all of those kind of go hand in hand. I think the next step here is popping into CloudGuard real quick so we can get into the console for a couple minutes. But with getting into CloudGuard, Jeremy and Johannes, it's that time of the event. I got the joke for you today.
Awesome.
What did the hackers out of office message say?
I don't know. What did the hackers out of office message say?
Gone fishing.
That is awesome. I love it.
All righty.
I love it.
Yeah, let's hop into CloudGuard, because this is, as we kind of progress through this with encryption, MFA, all of these things, we have a good security posture here now. We have our compartments set up. We talked about identity and access management and mainly focusing on having our policies implemented correctly. We talked about the fact that we can get very granular with our condition statements for what is allowed to be accessed, and then getting into Vault with our encryption. But CloudGuard, Johannes, what's CloudGuard? What's this going to help me with in my account to make sure that I have that next layer? Since security is like an onion, when someone cuts into it, I want them to cry. So how is CloudGuard going to really help me add a layer of defense, add a layer of security around my account?
So one of the principles that was kind of a follow and looked at with CloudGuard was, security is just really tricky sometimes, right? Making sure you have the right level of security. So the idea was that CloudGuard should be able to very quickly, you turn it on. We have put in a lot of our best practices in tracking down problems, whether it's with configuration baselines, it's with activity. We can turn it on, it can monitor your tenancy. You can then go and tune it a lot to exactly what you need. But from the get-go, just turning it on, it keeps watch on your tenancy and alerts you. And it can actually remediate, issues for you if you let it, and you want it to. So that's kind of the overall premise that, it should be part of our tenancy, a free service in our tenancy you can turn on, and it'll help you maintain a good security posture. I think that's probably the overall idea.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, Johannes, do you mind I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Do you mind popping up the console so we can take a look at what CloudGuard looks like in the console and like some of the pieces we're talking about here?
Yeah, I'll do that. You guys let me know when you can see it. If the resolution is okay.
Yeah, it looks good.
Cool. So,
and I see you have excellent there. That's awesome.
Yes.
That's awesome. Like,
yeah.
Mine does not say excellent in my tenancy. Just I'll put that out there.
To be fair, it's a very small tenancy, but I didn't want it too cluttered for this. So CloudGuard is obviously an OCI service from day one, built as an OCI service, fully integrated with all the other services. What that means is it can go and snoop around, whether it's configuration, using APIs to query different other services, whether it's reading the audit log. It does all that. It has access to everything. You give it access. So from the get-go, when you enable it, it goes and says, you know what? I would like access. You can give me read access to these things. You don't have to, but it limits my functionality. And you can also give me update privileges, so I can remediate some of these issues for you if you're comfortable with that. So it kind of depends on the use cases. A lot of customers enable this and give it read to simply be informed about issues. And then, corrective actions will be taken by, different departments, for example, that for example, own some of these resources. But CloudGuard lives in here under identity and security. We have CloudGuard sitting next to identity, security zones, other areas, web application firewall, vulnerability scanning, Bastion. So CloudGuard, it's enabled here. Otherwise, it will come up and ask you to enable it and go through certain kind of policies you need to enable. And you can do that by a click. You don't have to kind of write the policies. You just basically go ahead and say, yeah, please create those policies. But how CloudGuard works is it works on targets, right? Targets is basically one or more compartments. It works with hierarchies. So you can have a target at the very root. My tenancy is called Blue Bobcat. And it's, as you see, it says root here. So I can have a target that's at the root, and it will work on anything below. It inherits basically the settings in the other compartments, unless you have a specific target specified, on another compartment, part of the hierarchy, but then it will override, right? So you can go and specialize further down the hierarchy and further down as you like. For example, you can have at the root level certain configuration setup that looks at your overall tenancy. But then you have like a production compartment, you have a dev compartment that are very different, maybe in certain areas, how much leniency you would like to give. So you can do this. So targets, think of it as pointing to compartments. On what compartments is CloudGuard acting? And the two main components we have here is basically detectors. As the name says, you have a detector. CloudGuard goes through your complete tenancy or just compartment, depending on your target. And it looks at two things. It looks at configuration. How have you set up your tenancy? Do you have that public bucket? Do you have that public IP address? Or it looks at activity. Somebody created an internet gateway. That's not according to our policy. We would like to do something about it. Or somebody deleted a network security group. So some kind of activity. So that's how CloudGuard works. And we've provided these two recipes, detector recipes for configuration activity, out of the box. We keep updating them as well, adding to them different best practices. But essentially, we have a list of rules here, right? That work on all kind of different resources in OCI. They've been tagged risk level, and you can have certain conditions on them as well. You can customize them. For example, if somebody creates a security list and allows traffic from the big internet on all ports, or specifically maybe port 80 or whatever. We want to flag that as something that's not allowed. It's important to notice here that CloudGuard will react to things. It's reactive, right? It looks at your configuration, it looks at activities, and then reacts to it. It can remediate then, or it can alert you, but it does not prevent. I'm saying this because security zones, which is another topic, is more on preventive side, where CloudGuard is more on the detective side of things, and those two work really great, hand in hand. But really, the detective rules, we have a lot of different rules we're adding to them, and those rules, when they're added, they will be available to existing, folks that are already using CloudGuard. So these are some of the common rules. The same goes for activities. As I mentioned, again, you want the CloudGuard to react if somebody creates, an instant gateway. It can react to it. It can use the existing OCI functionalities to send notifications, raise an event, send a notification to your PagerDuty, and somebody can take action on that, or it can automatically remediate some of these situations, for example. Really quick, I know we don't have that much time. Responders, obviously, as I said, the automatic remediation. We have a number of these. It's, you need to be careful with remediation. There might sometimes be a good reason for things happening. So it's not always that you just want to go and enable terminate compute instance just because somebody did something. So it needs a little bit of thinking before enabling these remediations. And obviously you can also make your own. CloudGuard will react, it will send an event, and you don't need to use these responders. You can use the OCI event framework, and it can send events to other places, your own systems, people, what have you, and those can do the remediation or whatever needs to happen. Just as an example, really simple example, the simplest, I guess, a bucket. I just created a bucket yesterday. I created it and I set visibility to public, so everybody, if they had the right URL, can go and look at the bucket and the content of the bucket, which is not a good idea. CloudGuard finds this because it's sweeping my tenancy. So yesterday, actually, this was some time back. It was an existing bucket. So it actually found this problem in July, and it detected it today as well, that this was still a problem. With a risk level and all that, it sent a notification to me as well. And I can actually go and say remediate. In this case, I have not given CloudGuard permission to do so. So it says, you need to give CloudGuard the privilege to actually manage buckets in my tenancy. It was actually added already. So I can actually have CloudGuard remediate this and change the bucket from public to private. This is a very, very simple example, but just to give you an idea about the flow in CloudGuard. So really, that was the 5-minute pitch on CloudGuard. I think I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it's extremely powerful because, like I said, you can audit it like you just did and go through, or you can have some automation rules to say, oh, if there's a public bucket, automatically go, the response is remediate immediately, and that's something that's really misconfiguration of public resources is big in the news the last couple of years. So that in of itself, that example is a real to world example that I think a lot of people can sympathize with. But yeah, it's really powerful, and it's really a really useful tool for like set and forget it. Well, don't forget it.
Right.
Don't forget it, but set and let it work for you while you're not necessarily eyes on console.
Yeah, and the idea is we as Oracle, we keep adding detector rules to it, right? So whenever there's something we find that makes sense to really increase your security posture, keep things in check, we'll add this, right? So it's evolving, but it's a great way to kind of have a baseline as well. You set this up, you do your CloudGuard tuning as well. I work with customers to enable it, it runs for a while, and then you go tune it, right? Let's bring the noise level down a little bit and tune it to what our company needs, and then have it running all the time, 24/7.
Yeah,
So
and we definitely wanted to show this. We think it's super important. It's a great tool that all enterprises, probably all tenancies should have activated. But yeah, we are running a bit on time, and we're want to mention a few more things that integrate with this.
Oh, we have one question on that one.
Okay.
So is there a subscription fee for using CloudGuard? So I did add the link there. I just wanted to bring this up that there's not a subscription fee for enabling CloudGuard. You know, we in that link, I did drop it in chat so everybody has it, but it shows you all of the security services that are free. It's just a matter of turning them on or clicking enable, and that's one of the things that when you enable it, you can start seeing, you know, what you're able to access, and don't be concerned if like I enable it and within 5 minutes I'm not seeing anything. You have to realize some of these services do have to start collecting data to be able to give you the results that you were seeing in like Johanna's tendency today. You know, it's not something that I click it and immediately it tells me. It's going to be, okay, scan through the account, look through everything. All right, here's what's actually happening. And we got one other question that I wanted to bring up for Jeremy and Johannes to kind of go into. So can we share some best practices on how to set up system users? So for example, like a DB link user from database to database or API access, do you have a setup? Do we need to set up identity and access management user and policy or use IDP? Where is this authentication done? So there's a couple components there that we want to kind of break apart. So if you guys want to tackle that one real quick.
Yeah, I think maybe separating it out, because there's something about database to database, and it sounded like, right? And then there's the sysadmin kind of from maybe an OCI console level. Like, got that right? What we see is that it depends, but you have the concept of in OCI that you have local users in OCI that, you know, often we tend to say, don't put your actual users in OCI, that, you know, for folks that need access to the OCI console, use Identity Cloud Service for that as well. But you can have multiple Identity Cloud services, right? So for different purposes. So you can segment out users that way. I'm just trying to think of a few use cases here. What we do is say, well, you can have a user in OCI, for example, as the OCI administrator, as a break glass kind of scenario, right? Otherwise, they should still be in Identity Cloud Service, for example, because in there you can have those, you know, assign them groups as well that would then give them the proper access in the OCI console. But still, you know, you would have the users in the same place from an audit perspective, you know, password perspective, rotation, all that stuff. You would still adhere to those concepts, right? That's probably my thinking. What was the other part of it? Was that database related?
Yeah, it was database related. It looks like API access, and then you know, where is authentication done? And I think you kind of covered those, because the authentication is going to be done based on if you're using identity access management or an IDP. You know, where are you actually authenticating against when it comes to getting in from the console, and then from the actual system accounts. That's, you know, where you're actually linking that up to, as well as to what it's going to be authenticating against. So there's a couple different layers, I think, in that one. So I think we kind of covered it there, and I think we'll definitely add a follow-up article that I think can help dive deeper into that section. So appreciate you, Johannes, for going into that question. Thank you. All right. Jeremy, any final thoughts, any last words of wisdom from you and Johannes on security? I mean, my last thought is security is important. Everybody should be looking at security. I know the developers of the world want to just run forth and build everything, but we do have to have security. So we got to make sure that we have security implemented in every layer of what we're doing.
Yeah, definitely. And it's job zero, and it's also everyone's job. Is you see through the tool set within OCI, it starts with the developers, it starts with the implementation engineers, it starts with the users and the data, the type of data they input. OCI provides the tools to manage and mitigate any risks any faults that are introduced in the system. But again, it's everyone's job the whole way up and down the stack to take advantage of the services, of the best practices, and and people like Johannes that are at Oracle ready and really to help, willing to help. And I'll let the last word be Johannes. Is there anything that you would like to pass on?
Just a few things. That is, one thing is, taking a look now at the OCI console, just the speed of which new services I added, especially around security as well, is just pretty amazing. I mean, I've been part of this from the get-go. So definitely new services being added. Just kind of plug for Bastion service. Don't build your own Bastion service. If you need a Bastion service, use the managed service, for example, to kind of cut down on that. And the second is, I do know we have a ton of good blogs out there on the Oracle website around a lot of security concepts and areas that maybe we should also share a few links to those if they're not already in there. Because over the last couple of years, we've written quite a lot of blogs that look at it from a customer perspective. We have this use case, how we resolve it. That's probably 2 cents.
Good deal.
Right. Definitely important. And so I want to give a special thank you for Johannes for joining us today as our security expert. As long as Jeremy and I have been in the industry, I mean, we still bring in experts. I'm still going to bring in an expert on specific topics to help me when I'm building out architecture. So, keep that in mind as you build out. I'm going to hand it back to Kenna. I think she has some follow-up pieces. Thank you, everybody. And Kenna, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. I just dropped a link to the OCI blog in the chat, by the way, so good call out on that. There's a lot of really good resources in there. There's also some links in the chat back to the forum, so if you come up with questions later on, feel free to go post questions in there. I'm going to launch one final poll. If you have a moment and want to drop some feedback in the poll section there, that's awesome. We always love to hear from you post-session. And we will be posting this replay up on the CCC forums and also adding it to our YouTube playlist. So if you want to revisit it or if you want to share it with somebody, please do share it out, let other folks know. We have 3 more of these sessions. So come back in 2 weeks on a Tuesday and join us for future topics as we dig further into all of the fundamentals of OCI. Thank you so much to Johannes for joining us for this special security quick start, and to Jeremy and Larry. And we will be back in a couple weeks for more. Thanks so much, everybody.